People often ask, why are there so many different translations of the Bible and which one should I read? And so that's what I'm going to talk through in the next couple of minutes. The fact is that there are a lot of different translations, English translations of the Bible, and it's amazing that two people can be sitting next to each other, both reading the same passage of the Bible, and it says the same thing but in slightly different ways. And there's four primary reasons why there's so many different translations. The first reason for different translations is that the Bible wasn't originally written in English. It was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. As South Africans that live in a culture with multiple languages, we understand perfectly well that it's not always easy to translate one language into another using just one word. For example, the phrase South African slang, which says, "Don't tune me." How would you translate that to an American, someone that doesn't understand our context? Would you say, "Don't provoke me," or "Don't disrespect me," or even the American, "Don't sass me"? What would you choose? And so people that translate the Bible have to make those kind of choices. They've got to go, which word am I going to use here, or which word best describes what the Greek, Hebrew, or Aramaic is saying. There's also not just the meaning of the word, but the sense of the word, because the sense or the feeling of "don't tune me," it's what it means, but it's also how it feels. And there's a sense of irritation at the provocation, that you're irritated, annoyed at the fact that the person is tuning you, or disrespecting you, or provoking you. And so you've got to try and convey that sense as well. And so when people translate the Bible, they use two choices. Are we going to go for a word-by-word translation, or are we going to go for a thought-by-thought translation? And that accounts for quite a few of the differences between the number of translations that we have. The third reason for a bunch of different translations is that the English language itself is changing. The King James Version of the Bible was translated in 1611. I mean, Shakespeare died in 1616, and if you've ever read Shakespeare, it sounds very different to how we speak today. And so as the English language changes and evolves, we need newer translations to translate the Bible into modern current language. And of course, in 50 years' time, the English that we use of today isn't going to be the English we use of then. And so we'll need further translations again to translate it into modern current English. The fourth reason that accounts for different translations is the standard of English that the translators presume the reader has. Some translations are translated into third grade standard English, and so they presume that people are probably either really young or second language English speakers. And then other translators translate it into grade 12 standard English. And so they're presuming quite a thorough knowledge of the English language. And so that accounts for, again, different translations of the Bible. And the last reason for different translations into English is that the translators presume on a different level of knowledge of the English language in their reader. And so some translations translate it into grade 3 level English, and other translators will translate it into grade 12 level of English. And so they make decisions based on how they translate the original language into English based on the level of their reader, the presumed level of their reader. So based on all of these, you might be asking, which translation of the Bible should I use? And I always recommend that people use the New Living Translation, or the NLT version of the Bible. It's a really modern translation and a really accurate translation of the Bible. This is actually the version of the Bible that we use in our Sunday services because it's just easily accessible and easily applicable to people's lives. Now, that's what I use for my everyday reading of the Bible, but if I'm going to study the Bible, if I'm going to go a little bit more in depth, I might use the New King James Version of the Bible, which is a really accurate word-by-word translation, or even the Amplified, where they don't make a whole bunch of choices about which word to use. They kind of just throw them all in there so that you get a real thorough sense of what the Greek or Hebrew means. And that's what I use to study the Bible. But for everyday reading of the Bible, you can't do much better than the NLT.